Is it just me, or is Mattel hoarding up a lot on Horde lately? Here's a look at the Mattel Master Universe Masterverse, New Eternia, Horde Leader, Hordak. The force behind the destruction that devastated New Eternia leads his evil horde to New Etheria with his continuing quest to conquer the universe. When you stop to count how many Hordaks we've gotten from Mattel, I think we can now move to a second hand. This might in fact make the 8th Hordak we've gotten from Mattel. And of course, before we look at the Hordaks of the past, let's look to the one of the present. And in the present time, we're going to take the tool of the trade, which just happens to be my trusty tape measure, and let's take it right to the very top, or in this case, the crest of New Etheria Hordak. The tape measure is going to tell all of us that the figure stands at 7¾ of an inch in height, working out to be a figure that's 19 centimeters tall. 8? I think that gives us 8. Bringing the other Hordaks we've gotten from Mattel, here's what the figure looks like with the original Origins Hordak, although to be fair, I did swap out the head sculpt that came with the Deluxe Buzzsaw Hordak. We got as well a Hurricane Hordak that, as far as I know, is still only a Mattel Creations. We got a Prototype Hordak, although I've swapped out the head sculpt. I was at one point displaying it with my Hurricane Hordak. I kind of stopped doing that. We did get one as well with the Turtles of Grayskull. We did get a Cartoon Collection Hordak. And of course, we also did get ourselves a larger scale New Eternia version of Hordak, which again kind of keeps the colors to the blue. I do actually like that the New Etheria release of Hordak actually does things more in gray, more akin to what we actually got with the classic and vintage toy line. This also helps the 6 to 7 inch collectors. Here's what Hordak looks like along with She-Ra. Shadow Weaver, which again, I think like a lot of these figures that we've gotten before, will probably get overhauled and get new releases. Like, for example, Shadow Weaver. I'm sure a Grizzlor will be in the immediate future. A Leech. I just recently picked up Leech, even though he's slightly an older figure. Let's also bring in Catra. Speaking of older figures, I think it's long overdue that we get ourselves a new Catra. And I also have myself the Horde Trooper. I don't know really what's wrong with this Horde Trooper as of late. I've noticed he's begun progressively getting loose in the top of the torso. Let me know if you've also had similar issues. But here's also what Hordak looks like. A bit of a floppy mess with the Horde Trooper, but at least the way he looks like with the rest of the larger scale figures. I started to rip the bag at the beginning, but I didn't show you the contents inside. Those contents would be over here. The figure first does come included with a Horde shield. Hordak seems all about branding things that belong to him. So, for example, you get yourself the Horde symbol, but it really is just Hordak's face. The Horde face also does continue with a couple of gargoyle wings on the side. I do actually like there's some nice texturing done to this. There doesn't seem to be any paint, but I guess in a case like this, doesn't necessarily need the paint. On the back, though, the straps were cast separately and then adhered to the top. So there's a place, of course, that loop this around his arms. You basically just take yourself the figure and loop your hand through that. It doesn't really become all that difficult. The only thing you really need to do is really open up the fingers just to fit that around the handle. That might in fact be the only real thing to worry about. And then also the little strap that he has around his bicep does flop around from time to time, but you can in fact get the shield on his hand. I'm just not going to spend a whole lot of time doing it. The figure does come also include with his arm cannon. Now, to bring back in the original Hordak, you can see, though, it's not a completely retooling, obviously, because this would have been attached already to his arm. This is a separate piece. So this piece, in fact, can be swapped out with either side of the figure's body. You have to remove the wrist. You have to remove the hand. You have to also remove the gauntlets, take them off on either side, and you just replace them with this. It's got some nice coloring and detailing done to it. Some silver on the end of the barrel. You got some silver on the sides and a little bit of red. I'll swap this out in a second. I just want to kind of show you guys in advance. The figure does also come included with a couple of wings. Now, this is a trend we started to kind of see with like the Turtles of Grayskull. Hordak up to that point really was still relying on a cloth cape, but it seemed like the Turtles of Grayskull Hordak introduced the idea that the character could have wings instead. Now, these wings would just plug onto the back of the figure's body. They're made again of the translucent same sort of red plastic as the shield. It's just that this plastic you can actually see a hand waving behind it. Hi, hello. If you actually look on the back of the figure's body, his armor that goes over top the existing body has 2 holes on the back. So you take yourself your wings, make sure you got them plugged in on the right side, and they just plug in place like that. Now, the thing that's cool about the wings is that there's actually a hinge there as well. So it's not just the case that they're Staction wings. Once you plug them in place, you can actually move the wings back and forth. So this on both sides. Now, I'll tell you, I'll be honest with all you guys, because I'd like to think that honesty is one thing that we do all the time here on this channel. I don't love the idea of having wings on Hordak. It's just my personal preference. If I really wanted to have the figure displayed on the shelf, I'm going to display him in the same way. There we go. I would really have him displayed the same way as my Origins Hordak, just really without the wings. Now, the wings you can bring down, so if you want to kind of give the idea that this figure does actually have a cape, you can pull it off somewhat believably, although if you look in between the figure's legs. Wait, what? If you look at in between the figure's legs, you can clearly see that the two pieces don't connect. But at least, though, the wings do fan out. And with that hinge being there, you can also bring them back as well. I mean, some people may like that look. I just don't like it myself. It's so easily, obviously, just to pull these back off. So just pop them off, pop them off. I don't know how many times you really would be able to do that without maybe fracturing the plastic. But at least they are removable. They're not dedicated to the figure. The figure does also come included with a staff. The staff does have a serpenting sort of gargoyle dragon on the top. It sort of is part snake, part dragon, all evil. Of course, it does have the wings on the back there as well. All this is really done with a very soft bit of plastic. I think there would be a way to remove this altogether. So if you don't really like this, it does look like, you could just attach it. I didn't detach it, but I kind of had the idea that you probably could. There's a hole here on the back. There's a peg right here. And yeah, in fact, you can just, the hard part now is just getting it back the way I had it. How did we have this? I guess kind of like, let's slide it down. Slide it from the top, work our way down. Would that be the easiest way to do this? I know I'm making this so much more harder than it needs to be. We'll kind of slide this up, plug it back into place. There we go. I think it's cool, in fact, that you can remove it. I guess really, though, if you were to remove it, what's it going to be doing? What purpose is it really going to be serving? I guess it could be just a spear, like a javelin. There's a handle here as well that you can put this in the figure's hands, which has been the figure's elbows just a bit. The plastic, at least, is forgiving enough that if you want to get him to hold things, you don't really have to feel like you're fighting with the hands at all. There we go. I would likely have the figure displayed with probably everything that you're seeing right now, and then just the addition of having the arm cannon. I think the arm cannon is one thing that would be a must for Hordak. As he is certainly out of the packaging without really even having the wings on, there's not much that I would really change the molding of the figure. There's a few little things for paint I would probably have corrected myself, says the guy that doesn't get into toy production at all. I'm basically just the guy behind the camera. But let's go ahead and just take the staff away from his hand right now. There is, by the way, no storage space. It would have been nice if they could have put a clip right here, for example, where you could have clipped this on the back of Hordak's body, just sort of like that. That would have been cool. I mean, obviously, it may have gotten in the way of the wings, but just a little clip right there. Right there. Let's move that off to the side, though, and get a closer look at Hordak. By the way, though, if you did want to swap out the arms, now both these arms work essentially the exact same way. So you've got the Horde symboled gauntlets. They're sort of a bit of floppier of mess, but they are removable on either side. And then, of course, he does also have his bicep bracer, which I feel like looking at this, even though I am looking at Hordak's face, it almost looks, by the way they've sculpted the wings, like it's facing the wrong way. I'm sure, though, you'd just be able to slide this down his arm and fit that back around the other way. But again, this is one thing that if you don't have it high enough on the bicep, you're going to find this is going to be flopping around a lot on the figure. Speaking, though, of flopping around, what? We're going to go ahead and remove the hands, and we're also going to as well remove the gauntlets. Why I'm removing those things is obviously to bring in his arm cannon. The cannon has a peg on the inside. There's a hole right here. It's simple shapes, everybody. You basically know how those two attach. And now you can give yourself Hordak with his arm cannon. Right from here, there's nothing at all. Again, I feel like leaving off the wings would be the ideal thing for me, at least. Just because, again, like if you're looking at a Hordak, and then you're looking at the original toy, short of maybe just having the missing cape, I prefer really having Hordak being a general, not someone that's going to have cape or wings. But I mean, if you're looking really at the two bodies, you definitely have taken a lot more cues, I feel, really from like the original vintage toy, the original Origins figure, not as much from the cartoon. If you really kind of look at the cartoon colors, which be the closest thing would be this guy right here of the larger scale. I really prefer, though, the gray, the black, and the red. I just think those three colors always really worked better for Hordak. Blue looked okay, but I think gray works a lot better. It's not to say really that they couldn't release this figure again just by taking those grays and molding them instead in blue. While this whole time of talking about that, let's actually look at Hordak's face. What a face. He does, again, have a lot of inspirational cues. The only thing he really doesn't have from the original release of Hordak is he doesn't have kind of more of that cream-colored face. Going, I think, with white was probably the better bet to go with. Still has the large eyes, has those red-looking teeth. Ooh, those teeth look gnarly looking. He does also have kind of the gray on the sides. Now, one thing they have done, though, is that generally Hordak would have like gray on the side of his face that would go into the inside of his ear. They chose wisely, I feel, to have this color being a black, and then having the area underneath, though, is gray. So there's a little bit of color separation. It actually even, in fact, makes his face look a little bit more sunken in. Of course, he does have the collar on the back of his body. The collar, I feel, could have maybe been just a little bit wider. I mean, some may have liked the idea that's a little bit more smaller in size. But you know, whether you like a bigger collar or not, it's definitely classic-looking Hordak. And it, by the way, does not limit at all the figure's articulation. He has actually a very squishy face. The face is made of a softer plastic, but it does have quite a bit of freedom. In fact, you can actually even rotate his head all the way around while it's still inside the collar. Horde symbol there featured on the front, no real different than other Hordaks in the past. He also has that on his arm bicep bracelet, and he also has that down below here in his gauntlets. The gauntlets, again, are a little on the looser side, but again, I can understand why, just because, again, like these things would have to be removable. I do actually think that they've done a nice job of also sculpting this, too, so it looks like hand-forged metal. Gray there on the front, or more so silver on the top of his loincloth. The loincloth down below is a softer plastic. If you were to lift it up, though, he does actually have black underneath, although there's no sculpting there at all. In fact, if anything, you can just see Hordak's package. Wait, what? And, of course, you got the... Here's one thing. Okay, here's one thing I don't really love about the figure necessarily, is that on the tops of his boots, they chose to kind of leave these gray. I think the decision-making was that this would be kind of the top accent of his boot. So this would basically be the represented area of his boot. If you look at really like all the Hordaks up to this point, Hordak has always had this symbol, but he generally has fully formed boots. In the fact that, like, right here, there's clearly a line where this boot is a separate piece that allows obvious for your articulation. Personally, I would have really chose to have this painted all in black as well. Leaving this gray, it's just not a look that I'm used to for Hordak. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad idea. I just would have preferred to have this filled in black as well. It's just so it finishes off the boots, and that red is in the top of the part of the boot. Just my personal opinion. And of course, he does also have the Hordak style boots. They're nowhere near, though, the large size feet that he has with general releases. In fact, actually, if you're looking at this guy and you're looking at the Origins Hordak, it's not really even a webbed kind of foot. It's very more similar to a monster foot or something like we would have gotten from like a Zodak. Although, again, he's got these gnarly looking toenails, even like this one little one on the side. He does have peg holes, by the way, on the bottoms of his feet, too. So if you want to make use of a display stand, even though I always say this, even though a display stand isn't included with the figure, you could most definitely use it because it's using universal peg holes. Stop that. For the figure's articulation, Hordak's head, as mentioned already, is very easy to move around. They've left enough space on the back of his head that you can move his head back quite high, and you can have his head looking low. In between that, you can also rock the head back and forth as well. I keep doing this. I keep feeling the need to squeeze his ears just because they're softer plastic. Top of the torso is going to be on a ball joint. One thing I did actually fail to mention, though, is that I kind of like the way they've sculpted the inside of, like, the front of his armor. Kind of looks like he's got these little claw marks on the sides. I'm not really sure what purpose it necessarily serves. I was kind of really looking back at the original toy just to kind of see, okay, is it trying to do a matching thing? I guess there are these little slits on the sides of his armor. Maybe that's what they're trying to replicate here. I kind of think that that's a little neat. A little bit of breathing there so Hordak doesn't get too sweaty underneath his armor. This still is something that's going to continue to slide down, so we're going to maybe work our attention over here. His arms do hinge out easily at 90 degrees. You can bring the arms and rotate them all the way around. The figure does have a bicep swivel, which allows the arm to do this. He does have a double hinge in the elbow that allows his elbow to do this. And whether you want to even use these hands, these would just rotate back and forth or hinge back and forth. You can also do this pretty much the same when it comes to the cannon here. The cannon really doesn't angle up and down just because it's pegged the way that it is, but at least you can rotate it to get the angle that you want. So if you maybe like to have the red on the top, you can do that. If you want to have the red on the bottom, or maybe even on the sides, you can do that as well. Legs split. Sorry to speak so loudly. The legs do split out. Van Damme is possible on Hordak here. You can bring the legs forward, bring the legs back. There's a swivel there at the top of the thigh. The figure does also have a double hinge on the knee. Articulation here for the boot, which again, the more that I look at this drives me crazy, the fact that this part isn't painted. Kind of even really tempted to go in there and try to color match the black. Am I going to mess it up? I'd say stay tuned. But even if I did make a mistake, I probably wouldn't let you guys know. But I just feel like this needs to be black as opposed to just leaving it for the gray. But at least, though, it does have a swivel for his boots, so you can rotate those all the way around. He has an ankle rocker up and down, or ankle pivot up and down, and he does rock back and forth there, too. Wow, what a great-looking Hordak. I would say of the larger scale figures that we've gotten from Mattel and of that new Eternia, in this case, new Etheria line, I think Hordak's probably top 3 for me. Top 3. I mean, I kind of really like this Hordak at the time that he was released. There were a few little things I didn't really love about him. I thought sort of he had more of a pig nose there. This one feels, I think, the most like a transitional or the next logical step if you want to basically get yourself a version of this Hordak, which for me, like, original Hordak is still one of my personal favorites. I like that he's basically like the next evolutionary step to this guy and not necessarily the blue. The blue works okay, I feel, for the cartoon. I think, though, when you start to get to a larger scale figure of Hordak, I like personally the gray and the black. I think those two color choices work a little bit better back and forth. Again, like there's always going to be the blue versions of Hordak. Again, most of the time when they usually are relating back to the She-Ra Princess of Power cartoon, then yes, they tend to be the black, the gray, and mostly all the blue in the limbs. I like the gray, though. I love the head sculpt on Hordak. There's a few little things, though, that, like looking at the figure, the biggest thing really for me is like the top of the boots. I feel like they feel incomplete. I feel like a little bit of paint should have just been painted in that area right there, so they would have matched all the tops of the boots like every other Hordak we've gotten in the past. Hordak is, though, a little bit taller than some of the other figures, so again, when you start to bring in some of the earlier Masterverse figures, like a Catra, Hordak is just so much better sculpted and like more evolved in the way that they've designed the character. He works definitely a little bit better, I feel, with the new Etheria She-Ra. And again, is a reminder that if you start to bring in the rest of the Horde members of the larger scale, you really will feel like looking at Hordak and then looking at those older figures, that all those other figures need an upgrade in the same way that Hordak got an upgrade courtesy of Mattel. Now, even though I don't like the idea of having wings on the back of Hordak's body like this, I do like at least the idea that Mattel gave some posability to the wings, so you can fan them back, or in fact, you can swing them back down to do a makeshift cape. I would imagine, though, you could probably even swap the wing placement around, so the points would be facing the opposite way, so that if you brought the wings down, you'd sort of have a jagged cape, and maybe those wings would be a little bit closer together. I feel either way, though, I'm just probably going to detach them and put them in a bag with some of the accessories I don't end up displaying with my figures. Certainly when it comes to displaying Hordak, the arm cannon is a must for me. I've also taken the liberty of adding the shield on the hand on the other side, and actually while I was attaching the shield, I chose to make one thing for a correction. I slid off that bicep band that he has. I decided to flip it around. Even though really like Hordak's now looking up and the wings are going the wrong way, I like that the point goes down instead of facing up. That is one thing, though, unlike the original vintage toy, you really don't have as much of an issue. I find like this actually slides a lot more down from the bicep. Every time it seems that you're moving his arm around, that bicep bracer seems always to get loose. The look of Hordak is fantastic, though. I really personally like the idea of having scaled-up representations of the origins in the vintage toys in 7-inch scale. Some prefer, though, to have Hordak in blue. I think the gray works a little bit better. The face is awesome on this figure, and I do like that they put a lot of budget into him. Really, when you look at the figure, you can imagine, though, that a lot of what goes into Hordak here probably can't be used again for another figure. So for that reason, I can understand maybe why. If you look on the if you look at the end of his arm cannon, there clearly seems to be a very dedicatedly shaped peg. One that looks hexagonal, one that looks like it probably would have belonged with a blast effect. I think maybe a blast effect originally was on the table, but with all the additional budget that they went into producing the wings, producing the shield, producing brand new armor and a new head sculpt on top of really essentially like the new Eternia body, I would think like all the budget was already blown, that a blast effect had to be scratched off. Because if you look at it, it does look like there was something supposed to be on the end of the arm cannon. Overall, though, what do you guys think of Hordak? Let me know down below in the comment section. This would certainly make top 3 favorite figures we've gotten of the 7-inch scale. I've always kind of been a biased person anyways when it comes to Hordak. I don't think that biasness has changed at all. With what we've got now from Mattel, I probably now will end up retiring the other Hordak of the larger scale because this one has the other one beat. What do you guys think of the new Etheria Hordak? Let me know down below in the comment section. Have you been lucky, first of all, to pick this figure up? Or is this one definitely also on your radar? If you guys did enjoy this video, you can do it a solid and throw it a like. Yeah. If you guys want to stick around for more so, and I certainly hope so, colleagues, friends, and viewers, make sure you turn the bell notification so you're going to get also always those reminders. But the biggest thing is obviously come back. If you guys need a fix for also New Eternia and also the other Master Universe reviews that I've done in the past, at the very end of this video, plugging shamelessly a playlist. It'll be all my Master Universe reviews. So feel free to go back and give those a gander if you have a little bit of time on your hands. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.